Hi, this is Lucas, and this is...
Dana.
She's from Mexico, and she's going to help me with this presentation. So this presentation's on Mexico with a Mexican. Come on. So the politics of Mexico. So Mexico is actually very similar to the US in politics, where they have states who elect representatives for their governments, and they have a president like we do. So it's almost identical, except I would say their governors have a little bit more say in their country than our politicians do. They can sign bills and they can vote on them like the way we do, but there's less of them, so each of them has a greater say. And that's pretty neat. Mexican food. So yes, Mexican food is very spicy. Is that right, Dana?
Yeah.
Which is neat. They make food with locally sourced ingredients. They usually use lettuce, beans, what was
Corn.
potatoes.
Yeah.
Basically stuff that grows in their climate. And they make food with it, so it shapes their food is the stuff they can grow there. And that's also pretty neat. Mexican art. It's a very vibrant art style. Lots of colors. Lots of dyes used. It's very, very hard to make. So it shows how much time they like to put into their art. And that means they take pride in it. And it's they like to do art. It's very colorful. That's neat. So this is the religion of Mexico. So I have a breakdown of Christianity within Mexico. 90% of Mexicans are Catholic, 1.5% are Protestant, and the other 8.5 account for Muslims, and the other 58,000 account for Jews. So it's very, very Christian country. Very little difference in religion, only of maybe 4 other major religions at less than 1% of the population. Most of them is Catholic, but that can be explained by Spain's influence when they gently introduced Mexico to Christianity back in the 1600s. So it's pretty neat. And to see how religion shapes the architecture around there, these churches look very like the Spaniards built them because of who brought over Christianity, but it was adopted very well by the Mexican population. That's pretty good. This is the language and dialect. So most of Mexico speaks Spanish, but there's a lot of Mexicans who speak the native language other than Spanish. There's some that speak... can you say those names?
Mixteco, Tipehuana, Cora, Huichol, Purepecha, Otomi, Mazahua, Nahuatl, Chantal de Tabasco, Itzoltao, Maya, Tarahumara. That's it.
Do you speak any of these languages?
No, really.
Ah, okay. Neat. Well, these are the native languages of Mexico. So this is the secondary languages other than Spanish that a lot of the people who live there speak. It's very neat. And there's a picture of a Mexican family. Mexican music and dance. So like the art, the dances are very vibrant and colorful. People wear colorful dresses. They will wear, and the men will wear almost like a suit with patterns on it. It's kind of cool looking. But the outfits complement each other. Usually the women's brightly colored and the men's dark colored, and it shows the contrast between the two. So that's pretty neat. And they're very lively when they do dance. They will tap dance, they will stomp and dance around on the stage. Pretty neat. This one's cool. This is Mexican technology. So this is the stuff Mexico's doing right now. They have a lot of investments with Ford, and a lot of education with manufacturing is going into Mexico, as the USA is giving them tons of funding to build cars because they happen to be a lot better at building Toyotas than Americans. So that picture right there is actually a Ford plant, and that's one of Mexico's colleges. There are a lot of other plants they're putting down there. They're putting down a Toyota plant, a Ford plant, whatever manufactures Subaru's Polaris plant. Tons of manufacturing is going on in Mexico, and they're industrializing very, very quickly. Mexican economy. So they're actually one of the strongest economies in South America, with an average GDP of 14,000 per citizen, or the average person there makes around 1,200 per month, which doesn't seem great on paper, but for South America, that's a lot of money. Over here, it shows the contrast between the regions, as the Northwest region can make up to $100,000, basically the same as Americans. But towards the South, the pay is a lot less, closer to $10,000 to $12,000. But the economy scales evenly, so it's not as much of an income disparity as it looks. They both live about the same way. And here's a picture of Mexico. It's all very neat. This is one of the side topics I picked. I picked Mexico's population demographics because it's very interesting to see how their population is changing over time and how dense it is. So right here, the center of Mexico is very dense. I'm going to guess that's where Mexico City is. Is that? Okay, that is where Mexico City is. This is where you used to live, right there. The little...
Yeah.
That's neat. But Mexico is actually not that densely populated compared to other nations, which is a good thing because they have more space for the next generations to inhabit. They're not all stacked on top of each other. But I did notice that within their demographics, there are a lot more men than women in Mexico, which is usually not a good sign because countries that have these pyramids usually are about to enter war. That's a observation I've noticed. All the countries that were about to enter a war or a world war, there was just a little bit more men than women. And you can see that right here in this graph as you get closer to the generation under 30 years old. There seems to be about 2 to 3% more men than women, which is kind of interesting why that's happening. I'm not sure why, but it seems just to be like swinging where like there's more women than men and now there's more men than women. So that's neat, but also a little bit concerning. This is the demographics of Mexico. So this is a little bit misleading. 80% are Mexican, but Mexican can be like half European, half the Mezos people. It's a very broad group. It's like how whites are like Germans, Italians, French, like it's very broad. But most of the people in Mexico are like the Mezos and the Spaniards, and there's a little bit of everyone else living there. There's like 1% of Venezuelan, 1% Cuban, 2% Puerto Rican, and 4% Salvadorian, and 5% others Hispanics who don't identify as Mexican. So that's pretty neat. Their country is a little bit diverse, but not diverse enough where it like takes over their culture. Mexico still is a very unique country, and it preserves its identity by remaining mostly Mexican, which I think is a good thing. They have a cool style of architecture, and they're helping to preserve that. But this is based off 10 years ago, so I'm not too sure what it is now. So that's pretty neat. Oh, I forgot something about the population. So the population of Mexico is actually increasing pretty rapidly. As of right now, there's 131 million people living in Mexico, as opposed to in the early 2000s when there was only 80 million. So their population's going up pretty quickly, which is a good sign for Mexico's growth and for them to be able to industrialize, because there's more people working now than there were 2 decades ago, and that's a good thing. Pretty neat. What do you think of this, Dana? No? You're nervous?
Yeah.
Neat. So the Mexican lady just showed me a cool new feature. I can pause my phone, so that's kind of cool. So she's a little bit nervous right now, so she thinks the presentation's neat. She actually lived in Mexico for 18 years, which is why I had her sit in with me for the presentation, because she's actually from there. She's not just Mexican. She lived in Veracruz for 18 years. See, this is Dana. She agreed to help me out with the presentation, so I'm now
Yeah.
with Dan again. Alright, so this is pretty cool, and this is the end of my presentation. Thanks, Mexican lady. And
You're welcome.
that's all I got to say about Mexico. This is slideshow. Cool.